Alright folks, it's finally time. I'm getting started on the bumper project, so stay tuned while today I turn this sheet of 3/16 steel into this with nothing but some basic hand tools, well, power hand tools, and a welder, and, well, entirely too much time. Alright, so I've been excited to get this project started, and I'm finally getting going on it. I'm finally feeling mostly good, and I'm not feeling sick anymore, so the project I was going to start last weekend happens today. I don't know. My hope is to get this sheet cut to something roughly like this template today, and start getting these bends put in the front. Once I get the bends in, I can figure out where I'm going to put the recovery points and how I'm going to attach them securely. I think I have some ideas on how I'm going to make that happen in the most secure way possible. The last thing you want is for those things to break free during a recovery. That would be really, really bad. And then I'm going to use the 12,000 pound winch that I picked up as a template to figure out how deep the bumper needs to be. I figure if it'll fit that winch, then it'll fit an 8,000 pound winch or a 9,000 pound winch, which is what I should end up with on this Jeep. Okay, so the Jeep is out of the garage, as you can tell. I took a moment to sweep up the floor. Now's a good time as any, right? I don't know about you guys, but I don't clean my shop as often as I should, and the start of a project is usually a good time to get that done. When else to do it, right? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the steel onto these sawhorses. I don't have a cool fab table. That'll be a future project, I think, because I really need to do one. Set one up if I'm going to do more fabrication projects. For now, what I'm going to do is get the steel onto these sawhorses and do the best I can until I can't use the sawhorses anymore, and then I'll probably move to the floor and just prop things up with wood or whatever when I do my cuts. It's not ideal, but it's what I'm doing, so let's get that done. Hey folks, I just want to take a second for just a little bit of an announcement. You guys might remember the Yes Welder auto darkening welding helmet review and demonstration that I did maybe a month and a half ago. Yes Welder has been kind enough to partner with SWBCrawler, and we've been working on a couple things together, one of which is a promo code that you can use on Yes Welder's website. If you go to yeswelder.com and use the promo code SWBFab, you can get a little bit of a discount. That's in the description at the bottom of this video. So thank you to Yes Welder, and like I said, if you're interested in any of Yes Welder's products, check out the description of this video for my promo code, and you can get yourself a little bit of a discount when you shop at Yes Welder. So with that, I'm done. Let's get on to building a bumper. So first thing to get done here I think anyway, is to sort of deconstruct this thing so it lays flat again, which is not all that hard. You might remember that when I laid this thing out, the cardboard was a ½ inch shy of the width that I really wanted, so it's 39.5 inches. So what I'm doing at the moment is basically laying it out, and I'm going to see how it fits on the sheet that I've purchased here. And what I'll do then is measure out the full 40 inches, set this, you know, a ½ inch in from the edge. I'll cut off the excess on this side. I'm going to leave that excess like I was talking about. And then I can actually get started trying to cut the steel to match the template. Now there's lots of ways to measure and cut steel. most of the tooling that I had when I got started fabricating are carpenter's tools, because it's the sort of stuff that I was doing before I started fabricating for the Jeep. So I already had most of it, so I've made do with this. There are probably better ways, but I've seen lots of fabricators use the same tools I'm using here, so don't judge me. When I'm marking steel, I usually use a Sharpie. I've seen lots of people use paint pens, and I may try that one day, but at the moment I have Sharpies, so I'm going to use my Sharpies. Now, there's a certain amount of inaccuracy that comes from the thickness of the tip of whatever you're using to draw your lines with. So it's always best to remember where you drew the line and account for the thickness of the line. What I'm doing here is I made my marks just shy of 40. Then I'm going to draw my line right at the marks. And then I'm going to cut right after the line. So I'm going to basically cut right at the edge of the line, if I can. The nice thing about working with this framing square and a nice square piece of material, or nice straight-edged piece of material, is if I line up this edge, I know that if this is lined up with the edge, this should be straight, assuming this edge is straight. Now, whether you're cutting wood or steel or whatever, the best way to get a straight line is to use a guide. So it's hard to do with an angle grinder, so when I have a long straight cut to make, I have a circular saw that I put an abrasive disc in, and then I take a level, or maybe that framing square, and I set it up as a guide. And then I make my cut along the guide. So I'm going to do that. So this is an older circular saw. I have a nicer one that I use when I cut wood. Whenever I have masonry or metal to cut, I use this one because I don't care as much about it. When this one kicks the can, I'll just toss it in the garbage and go to using my nicer one. But for the meantime, this is what I'm going to use. Alright folks, so what I've done here is I took a level, my older level, and I put it 5 3/4 inches back from the line, which is about the distance between this blade and the outside of the guard here. I've adjusted this about as high as I can to clear the C-clamps that I have. It will clear the level just fine. So now, what I need is safety gear, and I can make my first cut. Now for safety, I've got some eye protection. These are for shooting, but they work well for noisy things in the garage as well. I use these a lot. You may have seen me use them in my videos. And I've got some relatively worn out leather mechanics gloves. Guess I should have replaced them. I don't know if you guys could tell, but that was work. Okay, so I have basically, I cleaned up this edge a little bit using a flapper disc, just basically to clean that up so I don't cut myself or something. There's my scrap. Well, not scrap, but you know what I mean. Extra. And what I've done here is I've taken my template and given myself a little bit of play on this end and lots on that end. Centered it. I found the center of my sheet, which is surprisingly very close to 40. Without the plasma cutter and whatnot, this cut is tricky to get precise. It's about as close to precise as I'm going to get it in this garage. You can see there's a slight little sort of hump to it right here. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. That's all going to get cut and whatnot. Okay, so what I've done here is I took the 12K winch out of its box in storage back there and just kind of set it where it might sit if this were a bumper. The idea here is that I'm trying to figure out where the winch would sit so that I can tell how deep I need to make the upper flat plate. And what I've learned is that I don't think I need to add any gap back here, which means that what I can do is move this so it's almost flush with the back here. What I'm going to do, I think, I'm going to move this back half an inch, I don't know, to leave room here to build a plate, because this will be where the frontmost bend is on the bumper. And then I think I'm going to retrace all these lines, because I just got finished tracing them, and I thought, you know, I might want to know where the winch is going to sit. Now I know. So, okay, so I've got everything marked. What I'm going to do now is work on actually cutting out some of these lines. Now, I want to say something about grinders. You may note from this channel, and from the way I wheel and whatnot, that I'm usually one to err on the side of safety. So you'll notice that in this configuration with the cutting wheel, I usually have the guard on the grinder. I also have flapper discs that are slightly too large for my grinder. They came from Benchmark abrasives. They're good, I like them, I have a bunch of them, but they don't fit with my guard on, because I ordered the wrong size. These are 1.5 or 4.5 inch. I should have got 4 inch, which is what these are. So whenever I'm cutting, you should see that I have this guard on, and whenever I'm not, whenever I'm using the abrasive disc, the flapper disc, I will not have the guard on. Once I wear all these out, I will get 4-inch discs, and then they'll fit with the guard. But until then, I'm not wasting these things because they're nice. I like them. Good product there, Benchmark abrasives. Okay, I'm going to cut some steel. A few notes about cutting like this with an angle grinder. As I mentioned, I don't have a plasma torch, so all of my metal cutting is done through angle grinders, that circular saw I showed you, jigsaws, stuff like that. I have a handheld jigsaw that I'll probably use at some point in this project. Hole saws, drill bits, things like that. That's all I have at my disposal. So I've gotten pretty good at not hurting myself with a grinder. That's why I wear gloves, that's why I wear eye protection. You could say I should be wearing a face mask. I don't have one other than my welding helmets. Welding helmets don't make great grinding protection just because they're too dark. Ear protection. Notice the way I stand when I'm cutting with the grinder and the technique that I use. I make sure that the trail of molten metal, as it were, or cut metal, is not hitting me in any way, right? If I can avoid it, I do. I'm wearing a fleece sweatshirt. Fleece catches fire. Probably not the best thing to be wearing. I do have a denim jacket I wear sometimes when I'm welding or when I'm cutting. Today I'm being careful to not hit the fleece. I actually lit a pair of fleece sweatpants on fire welding once. I lit a sweatshirt on fire grinding once. I've learned these lessons. I'm trying to teach you. So basically, when you're cutting, stand with the grinder in such a way that the sparks are not hitting anything flammable. Jeans are pretty well protected. You could go with like Carhartt style stuff, that thicker, I don't know what they're made of, but it's not denim. You could stand like this as well. I usually try to brace my elbow on the piece if I can to sort of better guide the grinder to get a straight line. You notice that I score it before I make my actual cut. That's to help give me a nice bright line to follow, because the Sharpie sometimes you can't see once the sparks are flying. But there you go. There's some basics on how to grind without lighting yourself on fire or getting shards of metal in your eyes. Man, the garage smells like cut steel. Does anyone else love the smell of cut steel? I do. If you don't, you should go cut some steel and tell me. Tell me in the comments, do you like the smell of cut steel? I don't know if it's a grinder thing or if it's a steel thing, but the smell of cut steel, it just, I don't know, it reminds me of good times. Maybe I'm weird. Alright folks, it is day number 2 in the bumper build project. I'm hoping that today we can get this thing bent into the shape that I want it to be in. What I'm going to do, I have this method that I want to try that I haven't really done much before, where you basically cut a slit and leave some material so that it keeps its shape, and then you bend it and then weld along the slit that you made. So I'm going to try that on this project. And then we'll see how that works out. So hopefully it works as well as I think it's going to work. Otherwise, this is going to be a much harder project than I thought it was going to be. So the idea here is that I have a piece cut out that's going to come flat across the top of the frame rails, and then bend straight down at a 90, then bend back at like a 45, and then bend under the frame. Right? And then at the corners, it's going to be bent back slightly to give it a little bit of a better finish on the outer edges than just, abruptly ending. And then I'll figure out what I want to do to sort of cap that or whatever. As you may remember from when I built my cardboard prototype, the anti-rock arms, I need access to those, which are right at the end of the frame. And, well, basically I need to leave it open enough that I can get to those for greasing and maintenance and whatnot. So I'm hoping that I can work that in and still get a nice finish at the end of the outer edges of the bumper and still keep it nice and stubby. So, let's get started. So we got to the point where I need to be able to reference the frame on the front of the Jeep. So luckily it's a nice day out. I can open the garage door. Jeep is right there. I can use it for measurements and whatnot. My plan is to use as many of these mounting holes as possible. These are for the stock sway bar. This is where the stock bumper mounts. But my plan is to have the plate go all the way back to here. And I think what I'm going to do, instead of just cutting an opening here, what I'm going to do is go at an angle from here and then across, and then mimic it on this side. So I can get all 4 of these holes. And I'll put that reinforcement angle on the back right here. There'll be a little gap here, but I'm not too worried about that. So that's the plan. So I've got a cut on this side. What I'm going to do now is flip it over and make sure the cut is clean on the other side too. And I'm going to cut in here as well, do the same thing, and then I should be able to bend this downward. So, alright, so theoretically we can bend this down. We'll see how that works in practice. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good for not having a press brake, huh? So this will have to get cleaned up, obviously. This bend here didn't get as clean as I wanted. I'll have to maybe tap it with a hammer, or maybe it's fine the way it is, I don't know. Not too bad for my first attempt. First one done, kinda. I'll clean this up and finish weld it later, obviously. The goal now is going to be to get that side to match this side. Okay, so first thing I've learned here. Basically what you may or not have seen on the video is I cut through all the way from here to here. Okay? And then I scored right here, and I scored right here, and then I bent it down using an adjustable wrench in my case, but you can use anything that'll give you leverage. So the thing I have found you have to watch for, see how it tore? That's because I've weakened the metal and now I'm stressing it by bending it. I'm not too worried because that's going to get welded, but if that broke off it would make a whole different problem because all of a sudden nothing would be in alignment anymore. Wouldn't be too big of a deal on this piece, but it's something to watch out for, that's all. Now I'm going to tack weld these, and then I'm going to see if this end fits over the frame of the Jeep like it's supposed to. It may not. Look at that. It's like I planned it. I need to come in, I don't know, 2 inches plus 2 more, up 2.5, and then I'll have a angle here. Then I'll go straight across and do the same on this side. Got it? What that'll give me is clearance for the steering box. Yeah, clearance for the steering box, and then symmetry on this side. That's all I'm worried about. So what I'm probably going to do is take like a hole saw or something and cut at the corners so that I have a nice curve at each corner. See how that works. And then come up and then leave another maybe inch or so at either side and use that to fold up to make my rear brace for the back of this. Then the whole thing should sit on top of the frame. At least that's the plan. So that went surprisingly well. I cut an 1 3/4 hole here. The idea being that I have a nice curved edge now. Now I get to cut across, make another one over there. So if you don't know how I centered this, I basically took half of 1 3/4, which turned out to be 7/8 of an inch, and I measured down and in, center punched, and that's where I drilled a small pilot hole, as you might have noticed, and I started with good old hole saw. Alright, so what I have now is my 2 big holes drilled. What I want to do now is cut across here. So that has to get cut through. This one has to get scored. And then this whole thing is going to get bent upward. So it'll be cut through like there, cut through there. I'll probably leave bits here and there maybe. And then bend it up. And then that'll get welded along that edge. After I cut them, I need to make sure I remember to clean off all this mill scale so I can weld on that inner seam, because it'll be difficult to clean that off once it's in there. This I'll then cut at a slight angle, you know, from like the edge here out. I haven't done that yet. Maybe I'll draw that quick before I start cutting. This, of course, is the frame. There'll be holes drilled here for those mounting points. This will be slightly over the frame, you know, this angle here, but I'll just kind of go whoop. So it looks about right. Same thing over here. And then I have to figure out if all this fits on the frame. So far I'm happy with the progress today. I really want to get to that end though, you know, where it bends down to go around the frame. So we'll see if we get that far today or not. This is all taking longer than I thought it would because there's a little more figuring going on than I thought there was going to be. But in all, this is how these projects go. So if that's as far as I get for this video, then so be it. But I want to get this done. I'm very excited to get this finished. Well, that's what it looks like underneath all the crap. Okay, so I have this cut now. I'm going to try to bend it.
And I'm here with my daddy.
I have someone to help me this time. Wow. Why did I flip it over to bend it?
What have you did?
Gonna have to...
Can I put it somewhere?
Yeah, put it over there by the toolbox, maybe.
I don't want to get it dirty.
Okay.
How about I put it right here?
Okay.
Daddy, look at the sticky notice thing.
Yeah, I left it there. melted metal that holds that together for now. See this mark here?
Uh-huh.
That's where I did the same thing on the other side.
So that's the glue?
Well, this is how hot it gets. It gets so hot it discolors the metal.
No, is that the glue?
It's like glue, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Same idea as glue. So tell the camera, what do you think about welding? You want to learn how to weld someday? There's not a lot of girls that weld. Mostly men do it. You could be special. You could be a welder. What do you think? No? You don't want to be a welder? All right. See that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I've got the top part of the bumper pretty well assembled here. I've got a bend here and a bend here to add rigidity to that part of the bumper. And I have Harper here. Say hi.
Hi.
And I have this here to give rigidity to the rear part of the plate. This is the point where a winch would sit. So since there's no winch yet, that's just there. I'm probably going to get that 12K out again. And no, that's not a winch. I'll show you a winch in a minute.
Okay.
Probably going to get that winch out and set it here and see how things fit.
And show me.
And then the plan here is that there's about 2 inches from here to the end of the frame. Then I'm going to come another inch or 2 out, and then it's going to cut across and fold down. When that folds down, there's going to be another crease along here and another fold that goes back toward the frame, and then yet a third crease that goes under the frame. So we're getting there. Getting there. Okay, so after some figuring with that winch, I've decided that the right thing to do is to come about this far out. Sorry, camera wasn't positioned right. Come about this far out, and that's where I'm going to make the first 90-degree bend that goes sort of down the front of the frame. That'll give a good 3-4 inches between the front of the bumper and the frame, which will give me lots of room to securely mount my my recovery points. You'll notice that the line is now white. The Sharpie wasn't working out so well for me, so I remembered I had this guy. He's a wax pencil. He makes a nice white line. So I'm going to score across the whole thing. Hang on, Harp. I'm going to score across this whole thing, cut through everywhere that I don't have these lines, and then I should be able to bend downward. Then I'll have the first spot that looks like an actual freaking bumper. Well, folks, so far this is the biggest bend I have to make, so let's see how this goes. I don't know where I'm going to find the leverage that I need to to make this one. I'm running out of sawhorse. What am I going to do here, guys? How am I going to bend this? I don't have the leverage I need. Let me work on this. I've kind of figured out a solution here. Basically, I have this clamped down to my workbench here. The workbench isn't secured to the wall, though. I wish it were, because this doesn't work well, but I'm getting some progress on it. Basically, I have to bump it. Right? Every time I bump it, it gets a little more of a bend. So on to something else. So sometimes you got to get a little creative. The bench wasn't working, so I thought this little workmate might do the job, but I got no way to get leverage on it. So I have it C-clamped to the top of the table. I have a ratchet strap down to the step that you'd normally stand on, and Well, it seems to be working. I'm just waiting for this to snap. Like right in my face. But I used these ratchet straps once to pick up the body of a YJ. So I'm not too worried about their strength, but I am worried about this like breaking free. And maybe I should put on safety glasses or a helmet. So what I ended up doing was taking the angle grinder and cutting some more material out of this middle one. I'm just going to keep a closer eye on the outer two. They look like they're doing okay for now. Alright folks, so that's it for today, and that's it for this episode of this build. I did get the bend put in, and I now have it resting on the front of the Jeep. So I'm going to pull it into the garage in a minute to get better footage, but there it is. So far, so good. Fits pretty well. I got 2 more bends to make in the front of that bumper, and with how difficult that one was, I'm not looking forward to them. So, I do want to show you guys something though. Remember how I cleaned the shop before I started? Well, check this out. I don't know how well you can see that, but that's all metal filings. And I think I got some in my sinuses. So maybe I should start wearing a respirator when doing this work. I don't know. But figured I'd pull it in here where there's better light, get you guys a little bit of a tour. So basically what we got here is I have this rear lip. You can see there's a little bit of a gap, which is undesirable, but it's the way it worked out because of my lack of a press brake. I don't know if a press brake would have solved that anyway. Keep in mind, folks, this is kind of an experiment with this whole bending, scoring and bending solution. You'll notice there's a gap here as well. I don't love that, and I'm worried that that's going to make me make a weak point. So what I'm going to do, you can see I left a bunch of space behind, between the bumper and the frame. My plan is to brace the hell out of that. Put cross braces in there and weld them in there good and tight. The recovery points are going to go somewhere around here on each side of the frame. I'm going to basically cut a rectangle flush with the top of this. Slide it in there, weld it outside, weld it inside, weld it to the top here from the inside. That'll add some rigidity here, right? That's one thing that's good. 2, it'll give a nice spot up here where that toe point is attached to the same spot where my winch is going to be attached. This upper plate is pretty darn sturdy, I think. In all, I like how this turned out. Just in general, I like the gap isn't bad. You won't see it once there's a winch there. When I do put on a winch, I'm going to build a nice guard on the front. A plate for the winch to bolt to the back of, because that's basically how that has to work. Plenty of room here for the steering box. In all, I'm liking this so far. Well, folks, there you have it. Building a bumper, or at least getting started on building a bumper. Part 1, with hand grinders and, other drills and tools and whatnot. So far, this is a hell of a lot of work. I think the next thing I want to invest in the shop is a very loud muffler. No, the next thing I want to invest in the shop is a dang plasma cutter, because I'm getting sick of these grinders. I went through 3 of my 5 cutting discs, and what I need to do now is maybe pick up more before I can finish this bumper off. I don't know. But thanks for watching, folks. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've learned something about how to fabricate and how to do it without all the fancy tools that you might see on some other channels. And thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in part number 2, or I guess it'd be part number 3 if you count the cardboard-aided drafting, or cardboard-aided drawing, cardboard-aided design video. Yeah, so I guess you'd call that part 3 coming up. This is part 2, technically. Whatever, I'm rambling. My point is, thanks for watching. Tune in next time to hopefully see me finish this bumper, and voila. Thanks. Hey you stuck around to the end of the video. You're awesome. You should probably hit the subscribe link up over here, and make sure you hit the notification bell. Otherwise, YouTube's not going to actually tell you when I produce something new. You can also support me via Patreon by clicking the link up over here. And if you like this video, you should probably check out the recommended content that's coming up down over here. If you want merch like I'm wearing right here, you should go to SWBCrawler.com and check out my shirts and hats and whatever else I've got for sale. Thanks for watching.